finally share about my soul contract readings. I think it's important to really understand what it means for a person, personally, and I can talk about how great it is. I can talk about all the good things that you might get from a soul contract reading, but I think if I share my own experience, it really allows people to appreciate it at a new level. So I've had, I think, 4 readings now. I got 3 of those through the training I did to become a soul contract reader. We practice on each other. And so, they weren't necessarily full readings, but, I definitely got the gist of it. And, I've had readings from other systems before. Things like astrology, human design, the gene keys, although gene keys isn't so much a reading as looking at my own chart, so to speak, more traditional numerology, all those things, and they all lend different aspects of understanding myself. So they're all good. I certainly enjoy this stuff. This is kind of what I live for. So there's that aspect for me. I realize not everybody's necessarily going to be drawn to this stuff quite in the same way as me. I'm definitely obsessed with it, but yeah. So I just want to, you get to know me a lot better, kind of what I'm about and what I've got going on, right? I certainly don't have everything figured out, but I'm well on my way to having a much more fulfilling life. Things have really shifted for me in the last 3 or 4 months, certainly, but I think it's all been building for a number of years, and all the different things that I've done to help myself along the way. So the first part of my chart, and I don't know that I'm going to show my chart. It's a bit of a private thing. People that are trained in this will probably be able to understand what numbers are where, and that's okay. But the first part is your physical part, right? So usually in readings, my experience is people always start with the physical karma, right? It's kind of the thing that's really going to be present for a person when they're starting out as a child and going through their childhood and all the family stuff and all that stuff. And something, my perspective on all of this, and you can share it or not, of course, but my perspective is that we came here as souls, having a physical experience, a personality experience, so to speak, with certain things that we wanted to get out of this life, kind of like lessons or themes to our lives, things that we wanted to conquer or accept about ourselves, or whatever the case might be. And I think, not to put anybody off the hook for things that they've done to us, but I think in a lot of ways I see whatever happens to us in our lives, that's kind of an agreement with another person. So we come with all this energy, these things that we're attracting to ourselves, right? And the soul contract reading will give you a map to that. And then the people in our lives, especially those closest to us, our family and our friends and, even our enemies, will help us play out those scenarios so we can learn those lessons. And, it's a really hard thing not to see things that other people are doing to us, because people do things to us in a sense, and not blame them, right? I blamed people all my life. I still do it sometimes. But if you're able to, and I've been able to in my life, take a bit of a higher view, like a more objective, zoomed out view, so to speak, then maybe there's some room in there to understand at a very deep level, at some level that we don't necessarily understand. And it doesn't diminish our experience. It doesn't take away how difficult life is and everything that's happening, and how upsetting it is when people do things like, things even like murder and stuff. Like where does that fit in? Is that part of the plan? And then you know, the way I look at that is, I don't know, maybe that is part of the plan, or maybe that's, you know, when the plans kind of go too far, or who's to know. You know, and this isn't to diminish anyone's feelings or experiences, but for me, having this more objective, you know, view from up above, so to speak, and the whole play that is life, my life, I think it helps me to not quite take things so seriously and, you know, forgive people. I think forgiveness is one of the hugest ways to healing, right? And not a fake forgiveness, but, you know, a truly real, authentic forgiving of a person, right? And that doesn't mean what they did was okay, but it means that we're not going to let it ruin our lives anymore. But anyway, I kind of got sidetracked there. Back to my chart. So the first part of my chart, the physical karma, is really about creativity and frustration. So this idea of having a thought, and I have a million ideas, right? And this is how this dynamic all plays out. Having this thought, but then having another thought, and you know, not having that focus, not being able to focus on things and completing them right to the end, right? It's very common for me to get to 70-80%, and then some, you know, really interesting thing, right? My mind's always going, and that's another part of my chart, but you know, oh, there, you know, shiny object syndrome. Oh, that looks super interesting. Let's dive into that headlong and not complete. And so there's this frustration and this letting of my, you know, letting myself down in a sense through that. And the fact that I'm not completing things just compounds that energy, so that karma, right, it kind of like builds, whereas if I can complete things, that's going to help clear it. So it's, you know, kind of this back and forth thing. And so things like, I don't know if you can hear this bird, it's quite lovely, but quite loud. So for me, you know, making lists, having a plan, checking things off, you know, appreciating when I've accomplished a certain, you know, part of a task, you know, really getting organized. My current relationship, you know, we kind of joke and about how I'm chaos and she's order, and it's true. There's a certain chaos in me that, you know, I've invited, but it doesn't serve me. So, where is my energy best spent? That sort of idea. And that can be really frustrating because I end up wasting time, so to speak, on things that aren't going to be fulfilling for me, right? It's not that there isn't necessarily value in it in some way, but it isn't a connection for me to fulfillment. And really, this energy that I'm talking about is the ability to connect to creativity, you know, through God. And so there's this disconnect there, and that's where a lot of the frustration comes. So the last piece that I'll mention about this first aspect of my chart is this being really rigid, right? And it shows up in my body. I often can be very, you know, I'm a bit like a box trying to dance sometimes, even though I love to dance. And just, you know, kind of being stuck and not being able to see things in a new way, right? If I'm able to see things in a new way, I can get out of that frustration, get past the block, right? That creative block. And my creativity, I mean, it can be any idea, right? The idea of this energy is taking a thought form and putting it into creation. So it could be something like this video. You know, I was big into photography for a long time, a bit of videography. I was never very good at, and maybe this is why, since it's in a karmic position, I was not very good at traditional arts like painting and drawing and sculpting or any of those things, right? I had a certain affinity, like I wanted to be good at it. but it was a struggle. It was frustrating. So I think that all really speaks to my experience. So the next part of my chart is what's called the physical talent. So this is something that's going to take a little bit of work for me to get through, but you know, it's not going to be so challenging. And once I've worked through that little bit, it's going to really support the other aspects of my chart. And so this is something, you know, that is a strength to me, that like a natural strength. So this is actually two energies. You know, the first is all about assimilation. So it's about taking in information and finding a new way to understand the information, right? So I love lots and lots of information. My mind's very busy, right? And I'm always wondering, what kind of structure can I create with this? What kind of new thing can I produce from what I've understood? Or can I take different aspects of different learnings, completely different, and bring them together somehow? And you know, this is kind of what I'm doing with this business, right? That I've been exposed to so many different aspects of healing, and now I'm coming into the process of kind of sifting through what's really works, what, you know, practically works, because that's another part of my chart, the practicality of something useful. And bringing it into a new structure, right? A business is a structure. It could be, you know, a company is certainly a structure. It could be a physical structure, right? That was never really my thing, building things. You know, there was a certain way I enjoyed it, but again, it was a struggle. And then the other energy of this is this idea of male nurturance. So it's kind of this strong protective energy. You know, it's really about resilience. So it can be, you know, emotional resilience. I have a lot of emotional resilience. I've had a lot of experiences that you know, I've learned things the hard way. This is foolishness to wisdom. This is going through the difficulties and building both the wisdom from that, but also the resiliency to go through difficult situations, right? And with this number, it often comes with loss. So it comes with, you know, it can be the loss of loved ones, it can be loss of jobs, it can be loss of a part of our lives, and I've experienced that a whole lot in my life. So yeah, this physical talent of mine, there's a very sensitive nature. There's you know, it takes a long time for my system to assimilate everything, like a new environment or all the information coming in, and there's this real sensitivity with that. But it also carries this fatherly energy, like I can take people into my space, into my energy, and hold them and care for them and empower them, and then they can go on their way once I've kind of taken them in and doing that. So that obviously lends itself to this type of work, you know. But again, it's those challenges of all the difficulty in getting to that resilience, right? Resilience doesn't just necessarily come naturally. There's all these experiences of loss, you know, and doing the foolish things and learning from that the hard way. I'm definitely a trial and error type of person. So the last piece I'll say about this physical talent of mine is this idea of needing to be needed. So there's this part of me that's very nurturing, which is great, but it can also take on the aspect of needing to be needed. So, you know, creating these situations in my life, and this is, you know, it's a little hard to admit this, but I've certainly done that where, you know, I want to be relied on. I want to be that person that people come to, and that rock, and you know, that's not always the healthiest thing for me in my relationships, or even, you know, working with people. So that's something, you know, that this reading really gave me an objective look at it. It's not something I particularly like about myself, but I know there's a real aspect of truth there. And the other thing about this energy is the objectivity. So it's like a spring that goes up and down. So when the spring, right, and if I'm patient and wait for that discernment, wait for the wisdom to come, then I can see the whole picture and I can make objective decisions. And you know, you find I speak very slowly, and it's because I consider each word, and I really want to mean what I say and not be misunderstood. But if I'm making decisions, right, which are very emotional, at the bottom of that spring when I can't really see everything, right, I'm in the thick of whatever it is, that's where that foolish piece comes in. That's where that aspect comes in. So, you know, patience for me and honoring the part of myself that wants to go slow and doesn't want to necessarily rush through everything. You know, there's a time for that, but this aspect of myself I need to respect at the same time. So the next part of my chart is what's called the physical goal, and so that with it comes about a half amount of karma, right? It's not the same as the physical karma or the spiritual karma, but there is a certain amount to work through, certainly more than the talents, and so there's going to be some work there to do. And for me, this is a very grounding energy. Like, I need to feel grounded. I need to be grounded in my body. So I need to come to places like this beautiful spot, right? Being in nature is one way for me to support that part of myself, you know, and just connect with nature. You know, that part of my chart is all about the earth, and you know, the struggle of that has been this feeling of being stuck in this physical body, like the heaviness of life, the heaviness of emotions, right? Emotions are extremely heavy as far as an energy, and so it's just coming to terms with that in a healthy way. And you know, one way that I can do that is to reach out to people and connect with people. And one aspect that I learned about, and I kind of have to chuckle to myself, is I often feel like I'm the type of person that does most of the reaching out, and people don't necessarily reciprocate that. I mean, there are some people in my life that do that, and I'm very grateful for that. But you know, this is something that kind of pisses me off about my life, right? And maybe this is really just about me and not really about the other people. But this part of my chart describes that, right? Part of my karma is to reach out, put out my hand and connect with people and create that community rather than it coming to me, right? And because of the karma, it doesn't necessarily come easily or without work. So there's that aspect. And another part of this is about achievement and really being able to appreciate achievement that I've had in my life. And that's, you know, I often slough off, like I've done something well, and you know, I do a lot in my life that I do well, and until recently I wasn't really able to take that in and just, you know, I would deflect it. I would, oh no, but you did this so well, or oh yeah, but you know what, I didn't do that very well, this one little aspect of the whole thing. And you know, I couldn't really take that in. And so understanding this helps me, it reminds me to, you know, take that in. It's okay. And it actually, by deflecting that keeps people at a distance, right? There's this idea that, you know, I'm doing a disservice to other people. And really, you know, it's important that I focus on myself, but in another way I can see it for them as well. You know, I'm just coming to mind there's a couple aspects, this and some others in my chart, that's very isolating. So it's almost like I send this signal out, and people who know me probably will have a laugh at this, but it's like I give off this, like, you know what, just leave me alone kind of energy. And it's actually the opposite of what I want most of the time. I like my alone time, but I crave connection with people and community. And so there's this dichotomy inside me where I'm sending out this energetic signal that, like, yeah, I want to be left alone, you know. Been called grumpy many times, and it's true. But then there's this part of me that so desperately wants to connect, but it's kind of this, it's a setup. I've been set up, and so I have to reach out and connect. And so, you know, it's kind of this ironic twist of fate, but I'm learning, and I'm just accepting that I have to reach out, and people will meet me there once I do that, but often I have to be the initiation there, and so that's been a really good lesson for me, seeing it kind of laid out for me that way. So this aspect of my physical goal, it's also got this protector, kind of fatherly, you know, a little bit of a warrior aspect to it, you know, the protector part of the warrior archetype. And so I've got a few of those throughout my chart. So, you know, being a father is hugely important to me, both to my son and also kind of to the world in a sense, you know. And again, there's this aspect of being needed and being clingy, and people don't like that. Women, you know, I've had a lot of experiences with that in my romantic relationships, and it hasn't gone well, and it's not an attractive trait. I think in the end, maybe for some women in the beginning it might be, but in the end I don't think it is, and it's not really what I want for myself, right? I've become enmeshed in so many of my relationships where I lose myself, right? I don't have these boundaries of where I start and another person starts, right? So there's this kind of just melding together, and it hasn't been healthy for me. So you know, that's another aspect. I want that melding with community, but I need to maintain my boundaries. And you know, boundaries is something I've been working on for 5 years, and I think I'm much better. But you know, these things continue on. Like it's not that you can't rest, but yeah, I just want to build on it. I just want to build on it. So the next part of my chart, it's kind of the big bad ugly for me. It's a very powerful energy, and it's really where I've struggled the most, but also I have the most potential for myself too. And often these things, right, with great power comes this great responsibility or things that need to be worked through. So yeah, this is all about disempowerment, right? Power struggles, being in disempowering situations, right? Being in disempowered all through my childhood. Even though this is a spiritual aspect, it's going to show up in some ways in my childhood. And, you know, it can be everything from a job to friendship to relationships. And I would say I've experienced all of those things. And the idea for me is this is the most powerful energy in this whole system, in a sense. And for me, it's shown up in a way that I feel like I'm a danger to people, and so I shy away from that power. I shy away from the destructive nature of it, because it can be very destructive if it isn't harnessed in the right way, if it isn't respected. And so that's just been a huge challenge for me. You know, I had some recent experiences with a very, you know, ongoing disempowered situation in my life, which has changed now, and I feel hugely free. You know, and I think there was some good reasons that I had these experiences, to learn all of this and understand that different dynamic, and so I don't become the thing that I have struggled through, right? And so I can accept that part of myself, right? This is the big bad dragon. This is the fire, right? If I don't know why I'm thinking of the Avatar, the kids show, which I love. You know, it's the most powerful element in a sense, but you have to be so careful not to get burnt by it, right? It's the thing, you have to tame that, and that's been taming part of myself through, you know, a lot of anger work, getting that destructive feeling out of myself, but in a way that's safe for me and safe for other people. And you know, it's slowly doing that over time, right? It doesn't just come out in one burst. You know, some of the readings, there's this aspect of like, you know, this is a very catalyzing energy, and sometimes even if I don't want to be, I can be a catalyst. I can walk into a room and people are just triggered by me and they don't know why, but it's like, something about this person upsets me. And you know, I've had that experience with people and with workshops and all sorts of things, and it's like, you know, it just adds to this feeling that I'm somehow wrong, that I'm doing something bad, even though that's not true. And so, you know, I've learned to just, in a sense, that aspect of myself that triggers people is a gift in a sense. It's, you know, it's triggering them in ways so that they can understand themselves better. And you know, they might be pissed off at me or not like me, and that's unfortunate, but there's also a beauty in it too. So, you know, it's taken me a while to get to this point where I can see it that way, and there are moments where I see it just as this dirty, evil part of myself that I want to be rid of, but there's also a lot of good in it too. So as you may have gathered, this energy is, in my soul karma, is about power and the dance with power and what that looks like. And you know, it's also about really listening to yourself. And so for a long time, you know, until very recently, you know, I listened to everyone else. I couldn't discern my own truth. I didn't trust myself, right? There was this distrust of myself and connecting to my higher self or God. You know, when I heard advice and I just knew in my whole being that I should do something, but then somebody else suggested something else or said, you know, I should do this other thing, I wouldn't listen to myself. And so I created this distrust with myself. And so I'm rebuilding that as I listen to myself and you know, take things in. It's funny, I remember growing up, my parents used to say, you know, at some point, I just wouldn't listen to their advice. And so they stopped giving it to me. And the way I remember my childhood is that I never got advice, but I realize now that's not true, but I didn't listen to it. You know, and so I think at some point my parents just stopped doing it, and then at that point I wanted them to do it, and it's like this I can't, you know, I don't want this thing, but I do want it, and so there's this whole dynamic, and now I finally understand how that works, right? I have that clarity, and I can forgive my parents in a sense. Not that I really need there is anything to forgive, but I can let that piece of myself go and just relax into it. So yeah, it's a doozy of a lesson, this spiritual karma that I've chosen, but it also imbibes this power, right? This empowerment that I can harness when I work through the karma and get to that place, and I can empower other people through that, right? I can lend them that power and encourage them and be an example of how to take a shadow, a really dark, dirty thing about myself, and bring it into something beautiful, bring it into something useful, something that helps, that supports rather than destroys. So yeah, that's the spiritual karma. So this next part of my chart is my spiritual talents. So this is, again, something that I'm going to have to work through a little bit, but it should be fairly natural. And you know, this is a blend of a couple different energies. One of them got this aspect of slavery on the one side and dominion on the other. So there's this experience all between the two contrasts, right? The extremes of complete slavery to complete dominion, right? And not necessarily dominion over others, but dominion over self. Although maybe dominion over others is part of that journey too, right? I sometimes have taken control of situations or people in a way that was domineering, right? I named my son related to these aspects. I'll let you guess what his name is, but you know, it's this journey, but really, you know, it's this archetype of the king, of taking over the looking over, in my case, my life, and just really, the king is all about, you know, making the right decisions, making the hard decisions sometimes, and you know, ruling in a way that supports, right, and that isn't domineering, right, that isn't, you know, putting other people in slavery. And this is really about speaking up my truth, and speaking out for injustice, and you know, having gravity to things that I say. When I say something, you know, to have that mean something. And so, you know, these videos I've been doing is a huge part of stepping into that. You know, I done men's work, you know, I haven't done it for about 6 months, but I did it for 5 years, and a lot of that time I was in a leadership role. I was what's called a captain of a squad. So I was, you know, in charge of the meetings each week, and holding the space and kind of directing the whole thing. And you know, I learned so much about leadership and what it is to lead and empower people, right? There's that empowering piece of my chart. And also some of the uglier parts, right? It certainly wasn't a perfect process. So I got to use my voice and bring my values into it, and hear other people have that reflected back to me. And then the other aspect is this grounding energy, right? The forest, you know, the heaviness of life. And so for me, you know, that's not enmeshing myself in other people too much, right? I am served in some ways by keeping a certain distance, but being a part of the community at the same time. So there's this kind of paradox, you know. I'll do another video about paradox, but for me, understanding and accepting paradox within myself has been one of the biggest advantages or things that have helped me work through so much of this stuff, right? When two seemingly separate things, you know, two seemingly opposite truths can both be true at the same time, and you can hold both of those in at the same time, that is hugely empowering, at least I've found. But I digress. So yeah, there's this aspect of being grounded in community and connecting and reaching out, along with this voice of the king. So that is my spiritual talent in my chart. So the next piece, and I realize this video is going to be a while. I'm hoping it's not going to rain, although I think I'm okay. The next piece is my spiritual goal. And so this is what I aspire to. You know, there's my soul destiny, which is kind of like the grandest aspiration. This is like the next grandest, so to speak, in a spiritual sense. And for me, this is all about, again, it's a combined energy between two different energies, two different numbers in the chart. But one of them is all about truth. It's this very etheric, pulling down, connecting, channeling of truth, right? It's the kind of the weakest energy in the whole system. The most etheric, kind of wispy kind energy. But then it's paired with this other number that's all about intensity. It's about intensity in relationships and, you know, intensity in life. And I can say that my relationships have been intense, right? Hugely intense in an emotional sense, generally. You know, not so much about the mental. It's these huge emotions that, for much of my life, felt like might overtake me. You know, people often describe me as an intense person, even just, you know, resting asshole face. They just have this idea, and again, there's those energies from other aspects of my chart that kind of send this like stay the F away from me aspect. But yeah, I like the intensity, but I need to take breaks from it. It's okay to be in that, especially in in relationship, but I need to take breaks. Like coming out into this forest for me is just a break. It gives that real etheric number the ability to just be without the intensity of relationship, right? I can be alone, and that has served me well. So there's also this aspect of channeling, of communicating with my higher self, and starting to trust that, and bringing in new truths through that. And this can show up in writings, right? I sensed for a while, 10, 15 years, that one day I'd write a book. I don't feel like that time is now. I do feel like it'll come, when I get a bit older, and so again, there's all of this. There's the data of the world, right, from that other number, but then there's also kind of the spiritual stuff that I download that comes through, and my job in many ways is to assimilate all of that, right? So another part of this spiritual goal part of my chart is there's a very pioneering, like on the edge of something new, right? Bringing something new into the world, and it kind of, there's these contrasts in my chart, because some of the other aspects are more safety, right? They're not so pioneering. There's part of me that wants to take it safe and not upset the status quo, or tip the apple cart, so to speak. But then there's this other part of me that wants to blast it all open with this intensity. And so there's this play in myself that I find, going from one to the other, and finding the balance, and kind of like a dance. So that is my spiritual goal. So we come to the destiny, the soul destiny, the big one that everybody wants to know about. And this is something that will come into a person's life, and it's already an aspect of my life. So I can't necessarily say if I'm really in touch with it, because the same energy is in another part of my chart, right? And it's very common to have duplicate 2 or 3 or 5, the same numbers. It just means that you really wanted that lesson, and in different ways, right? In challenges, and maybe in gifts and in talents. So for me, it's this assimilation. It's taking this data in, making sense of it, reorganizing it in some way, and then also this nurturing piece. So this ability to take people in and kind of protect them and nurture them, empower them, maybe teach them something so that they can go out and do it on their own, right? My style is not to create people that are dependent on me. I actually don't want that. Like I feel like I kind of want to push people away, in a sense, once they've gotten what they need from me, right? I don't want to create people that are dependent on me. I want to empower people to go into their own lives and be able to support themselves in a sense, right? And there's a few aspects in my chart, that clinginess that I was talking about, that wants to enmesh in another, that kind of goes against that a little bit. But for the most part, that is how I want it, right? this soul destiny number also has that aspect of objectivity. I can see things if I'm patient, and wait through the really rough emotions for a more calm time in myself. And then I can see things objectively and use that wisdom that I have access to. So yeah, that's my chart. I don't know how loud this bird is. It's been fun to share this, and as I share this, I even learn more about myself. Things come to mind and I make connections. I've shared a few of those with you here just as I was recording. It's just a continual learning experience, and I had these 4 different readings, and obviously the numbers are the same. My chart doesn't change, but the dialogue between the people, each person's different, and their intuition bringing different things into the readings, and I'm in a different place. I'm different each time, even if it's only a few hours apart. There's, I'm going through my natural cycles, and I am continually evolving. So, it's never the same, and I get little bits from each one. So yeah, I think you can probably go and get one reading in the beginning and really sit with that one for a while. Like I said, rewatch them. I rewatched all of my readings before doing this video. I took a few notes of the things that really stood out to me so I could speak to them here. Yeah, I'm always learning, and I'm always seeing things in a different light, and that's because I'm different. So I'd love to hear the ways that you can relate to what I'm talking about here. I'd love to hear about certain aspects. I think it can be very empowering to share these parts of ourselves and put it out there. If you have any questions about the readings or clarifications on anything that I've said, I'm love to hear from you in the comments, and I can get back to you. So yeah, I just if you've made it this far, I know this video is going to be fairly long. I really appreciate you taking the time to hear about my experience. And yeah, hopefully you can have an experience with a reading, either with me or somebody else. I can recommend somebody if you don't necessarily feel like I'm the one for you. But yeah, it's a truly empowering system from my perspective, right? The awareness just, it gives me the awareness, which brings a little bit of space in between what's happening, right? The stimulus of what's happening and my response. And it gives me choice. I mean, what else do we have in life but making all these continuous choices and deciding to do things differently, making a different choice. So, yeah. Thank you.